BYU football takes down the Utah Utes 24-21. Third consecutive win in the rivalry. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland host Cougar Sports Saturday. Both of us do noon to 3 on KSL NewsRadio and Cougar Tracks as well. Huge win for the Cougars, Kyle. BYU comes out victorious 24-21. What a memorable night here in Provo.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different storylines that we could start off with, Mitch, but I think the first one we have to go with is Bear Bachmeier. Just the performance of a freshman quarterback, a true freshman. BYU's never had a freshman quarterback win this rivalry game, and Bear was the first to do it tonight. And, you know, he came up big a week ago on the road at Arizona. Never played in the rivalry before. Comes up big tonight with a 22-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter. BYU, they were down. They were struggling at times, and this team keeps on finding answers. They're resilient. They're tough, and they're able to run the ball effectively. They're able to, find some passing plays when they need, chunk yardage. It's remarkable the way that this defense has risen to the occasion. You think about the fourth down stops tonight. It was an all-around team performance, but I think that when they go back and watch the film, there's going to be a lot that they want to correct and things that they're going to want to improve on as they head to Iowa State next week. But Bear Bachmeier, that performance tonight, I think is the shining star for BYU.
Bear Bachmeier, 13 of 22, 166 yards, one touchdown pass, one touchdown run, 11 carries, 64 yards on the ground. Bear was excellent. I thought when BYU got down 14-10, you could get a little tense in the game and think, oh no, BYU is going to drop this one. Bear was poised and collected. True freshman signal caller, not phased by the moment. He's grounded in terms of he walks in the pregame field with bare feet. He stays grounded. He does not get phased by these pressure cooker situations. And I thought that drive where Parker Kingston scores on that touchdown, kind of end around 17-14. I thought that was huge because Bear, he stepped up in the pocket on a pass, moved to his right, found Carson Ryan for a first down. Big plays by Bear Bachmeier. He had a really nice night tonight, and just the whole night I thought BYU, there was a feeling the entire week that BYU was going to play well. This notion that BYU was just this big underdog to BYU, big underdog to Utah, I never bought into that because BYU continues to win at a high level. Yes, it's not always glamorous, and tonight was probably not the greatest thing of beauty in terms of a beauty pageant for BYU, but they always find a way to get it done. They've now won 18 of their last 20 games. At what point does the nation say, you know what, we got to start respecting BYU football? For many years, it's always been death, taxes, and Utah football. Well, now it's time to start saying death, taxes, and BYU finds ways to win, and they are a sound, solid football team, and now they're led by a true freshman quarterback. Bear Bachmeier was really good, and that 22-yard touchdown run, Kyle, that will live in BYU lore forever. Whatever happens the rest of Bear Bachmeier's career, this guy got it done on one of the big stages in this season against the rival, and now you've got 3 in a row over the Utes. Huge night for Bear Bachmeier and this BYU football team.
Yeah, when you make game-winning plays against the rival, you become a legend. You become one of those icons in this rivalry. And I mean, I think about the sound bites we played this morning when we were on the extended pregame show. We went through a bunch of these highlights, and you think about it, I mean, Beck to Harleen, 4th and 18 with Austin Call. I mean, you can go on and on, right? There are so many of them. Bear Bachmeier's touchdown run is now going to be another one of those. But I also thought that he had some really nice throws tonight. I think he had his best throw of the season, Mitch, that one in the early part of the second quarter. He threw a laser to Chase Roberts.
A beautiful ball. NFL throw.
Yeah, he made an excellent catch as well, but that, you put it perfectly. It was an NFL throw. There were a number of NFL scouts at this game today.
Five scouts from the Las Vegas Raiders alone.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think they were there to see Bear Bachmeier, obviously, as a true freshman, but that's something they might take a note of and be like, oh, wow, that was an impressive throw. It was a dart. But it was just, he made timely plays. I mean, how many times, you mentioned the 22-yard touchdown run there. How many other little runs did he have? He had another 3rd and long run that set up a 4th and short for BYU. I just think about the way that he's been able to use his legs. He had a nice hurdle tonight. He said that he wanted to use that one. He wanted to pull out a hurdle in the first game, and it took him, 7 games to be able to finally do that. So Bear checked one off of his bucket list tonight, but he's outstanding. He's got a little shimmy shake to him, but the moxie that Bear Bachmeier has as a true freshman quarterback, he's never too high, never too low. Just a consistent, good decision maker for BYU.
We talked about it so much this week on Cougar Tracks, the turnover margin, and BYU took care of the football. +2 in turnovers. Now in this 3-game win streak, +7 over the Utes. And for the third consecutive time against Utah, 0 turnovers against the Utes. BYU took care of the football, whereas the Utes, they coughed it up, the muff punt to set up a BYU field goal. And then also the Tanner Wall interception. Tanner Wall, what a great post-game press conference he had. We'll have all the video and sound uploaded on all the KSL sports channels. But you can see Tanner Wall, this game meant a lot to him. He now leaves his BYU career. Still got a lot of football left to play. But in terms of BYU-Utah games, Tanner Wall gets to leave BYU and say, I was 3-0 against Utah. Now, maybe there's a day these two teams meet in Arlington. Maybe we see that. Lots going to have to change for Utah going forward, and this Big 12 race is so crazy. But, Tanner Wall, that's something he should be proud of, and he even said that. He talked about how he grew up watching Harleen is still open, those type of games. And he was part of these BYU games against Utah, and he's 3-0 in them. Great moment for Tanner Wall. He's been Mr. Reliable. He always finds a way to make big-time interceptions, athletic plays. He's been an excellent story. I mean, since the moment that he arrived on campus as a walk-on wide receiver, there's always been something special about Tanner Wall, and that special ability and talent shine tonight as he got that interception on Devin Dampier, which was kind of a floated football. I thought that pass, it floated a little bit, and Tanner Wall made a great catch to get that play. It was crazy, though. In BYU-Utah fashion, this thing did go darn near close to the end. There was illegal touching at the very end on that onside kick, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, is BYU going to blow this with an onside kick? But it was illegal touching, and BYU was able to close out a BYU-Utah game with a victory formation. That doesn't happen every day, Kyle, but it has happened the last 2 times now in Provo. Who were some other players that really caught your attention tonight in this big win for the Cougs?
Yeah, I think that LJ Martin has been just spectacular, and he's been so consistent. 5 out of the 7 games now, Mitch, he's hit the century mark for BYU. He had a career-high rushing performance last week as far as yardage was concerned, but he carried the ball 26 times tonight, which is a new career high for toting the rock. He had 122 yards on the ground, but he's become Mr. Reliable for Aaron Roderick to be able to run the ball with. And that tandem between him and Bear Bachmeier, it seems like positive things happen when BYU runs the football. I mean, looking at the game tonight, you just think about where BYU is without 202 rushing yards tonight. Because, at times, Utah's front 7, and that defense as a whole, they played pretty outstanding, I thought, for much of the game until the fourth quarter when BYU kind of took control of things. But it wasn't an easy game by any stretch for BYU. I was impressed more with Utah's defense than I was with their offense. I thought that, there were some challenges that were presented there, and to be able to have a guy like LJ Martin, who he's battled through injury throughout his time at BYU, and he's been healthy. He's been consistent for BYU this season, and it's nice to have when you can have a true freshman quarterback who can rely on, some veteran wideouts, and then you also have an upperclassman running back in LJ Martin who's, just consistent. He's good. He's one of the best running backs in the Big 12, if not the best running back.
I think he's the best. 26 carries, 122 yards on the ground, 4.7 yards per carry. He didn't have a Harvey Unga moment as Harvey did in 2007. I bring that up because after the game, LJ and the rest of the running backs were wearing Beat Utah shirts that Harvey's wife made, and it had a picture of Harvey in the 2007 game. Remember when he ran over, Robert Johnson? And he looked back and had that big touchdown run in the win over Utah in 2007. I thought that was kind of cool because you think, man, that's been 18 years ago. LJ was, maybe 2, 3 at most, and he's wearing that shirt of his position coach. This game means a lot to many people, and LJ probably never in his wildest dreams thought, as growing up in Canutillo, Texas, that he'd be playing in BYU versus Utah. But clearly, he's ingrained himself into this rivalry, and that's a big win for him. I thought BYU's defense shined in getting those handful of turnover on downs. 3 turnover on downs on Utah. I was a little bit surprised that Kyle Whittingham went for it on 4th down. They were very aggressive. He referenced the analytics was suggested to go for it in the post-game press conference. I think I would have gone for a field goal, but keep in mind the second turnover on downs, Kalani calls a timeout. Curtis, the freshman kicker, he gets one off just moments after Kalani calls the timeout, and he missed it. And I think that miss maybe made Witt say, you know what, pulling him, let's go to Dampier.
Let's go with the analytics.
And that was a 4th and 7 spot, and BYU gets the spot. And then the third turnover on down. What a moment for Keanu Tanavasa. It's a new way. It's a new day. Keanu Tanavasa comes up big in this game that clearly had high emotions because he went through the ringer, transferring from Utah to BYU and everything that came with that. He heard all the grievances and all the complaints from Utah fans. He stepped up in this game, and I thought Keanu had a really sound football game tonight. I thought other players on BYU's defense, Hunter Clegg, he gets the start tonight at defensive end. He comes up with one of BYU's 3 sacks. It was a really sound performance from BYU's defense. They gave up a lot of yards, Kyle. Utah ended up with 470 yards offensively. Very balanced from Jason Beck's offense. 244 through the air, 226 on the ground. Yet they couldn't get the points. Utah outscored pretty much, or got more yards than BYU pretty much everywhere statistically, but BYU got more points in the end, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that is the name of the game, to score more points, and BYU was able to do that. You mentioned Keanu Tanavasa, and I think about Carson Ryan as well, these guys that were on the other side of this rivalry a season ago and what that was like for them tonight to face their old team, the emotions of that, to keep it in check. I mean, Keanu had a big pass breakup as well. Think about, some of the plays that maybe – they add up in this game, but they maybe go unnoticed at a time. Bodie Schoonover had another nice pass breakup. That defensive line played outstanding. I thought after, there was a lot of talk going into this game about Utah's offensive line being the best in the country. And I think that BYU's defensive line, their front 7 showed well in this performance. You had Jack Kelly return as well.
Bodie Schoonover had a nice pass deflection as well. Yeah. I mean, it was a all hands on deck effort.
Yeah, and Isaiah Glasker, he ended up getting hurt in the first half, and he went into the medical tent for a little bit. Didn't play the last drive for the BYU defense before halftime, and that was, I think, a big situation where, I was looking and saying, oh no, is this West Virginia performance all over again, where you lose, one of your best linebackers for the second half? But luckily Isaiah came out after halftime and he had a nice performance as well. But I don't think that Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker were even close to 100% tonight, but the fact that they were able to play and make the plays that they did. I thought Jack Kelly had a nice play where he tracked down Devin Dampier on the far sideline. I thought that this defense, Devin Dampier was held in check for a lot of this game. He didn't light things up like he has the ability to. He's a talented quarterback. And I thought that there was, some potential there where BYU might get exposed a little bit on the edge. It happened a few times, but it wasn't Dampier that was the one that was causing the damage with his legs as much as it was some of his teammates.
He did have that 26-yarder where he popped that one off, and Daniel Bray had the big one for 49 yards that got Utah up 49-10, but they had 14 plays total that were big plays for Utah, but it did feel like BYU always had an answer. And think about this in the game, Utah's offense never took a snap where they had the lead. So that's why I think it was so big when BYU down 14-10, Utah, gets up and you're thinking, okay, BYU's got to respond. They immediately respond on that drive to get up 17-14. So then again, Utah's offense, they don't come back on the field with a lead. Yep. Because I think you're calling a different game if you're Jason Beck with the mindset that you have the lead. And when you're always trailing, you're calling a different game, and it's a little bit different thought process the way you're calling things. So that was just a huge drive by BYU to get that answer. But, Devin Dampier is a very athletic player. There's no doubt about that. And I think that, BYU's defense, though, stepped up, and I thought Faletau Satuala had an excellent game. He led BYU in tackles, 12 tackles for Faletau, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass breakup. Faletau, what was interesting too was, man, he was laying the hit stick a few times, but I think also, and Tanner Wall touched on this in the postgame, he was asked about the evolution of BYU football since 2021, because you think about where BYU was that when they got that breakthrough win to end the 9-game losing streak to Utah. It was just 24 hours after getting the official invite to the Big 12 when, Dr. Lawrence Skuvanek, he said, like to invite Brigham Young University to the Big 12. After that, they get the win over Utah, and they've now won 3 in a row. You think about how much the program has changed in that time. And a lot of it ties to what Tanner Wall said tonight, recruiting too. Getting guys like Faletau Satuala, those used to be the guys that BYU never could get in this rivalry. They were always going to Utah. And Faletau had it down to BYU and Utah. It was an in-state recruiting battle. And I'm sure this game meant a lot to him as a local kid from Bountiful. And he stepped up and had an excellent game. And he stepped in relief of an injured Raider DeMooney who didn't play tonight. And it was a banged-up safety unit without Tommy Parasis, too. And Faletau, man, stepped up. He and Tanner Wall were excellent. They both led BYU in tackles. Faletau 12 and Tanner Wall had 10.
Yeah, especially without having Raider DeMooney on the field there as well. I thought that those two played outstanding. I mean, you think about this game, Mitch, and what it means to the state of Utah, what it means to these two communities, what it means to these players that have grown up in families where, half the family roots for one team, half of them root for another, and then you add the recruiting battles into it as well. I mean, there were a number of recruits out tonight at this game that were on the sidelines watching it. None greater than Ryder Lyons,
the King of Aura,
who is here out of Cal.
Nick in the Cut was there too. Nick in the Cut is the videographer for Ryder Lyons.
Yeah, and to be able to have those guys come away seeing a tough victory, 3-point win over Utah, BYU fans being told not to storm the field and then ended up storming the field. It's just the whole encompassment of a rivalry win for BYU was on display tonight. And it was at the peak of this rivalry in a lot of ways because now these two programs are in the Big 12 conference. BYU took another step in this Big 12 title race. They are now the lone dog up atop the standings there in the Big 12 after Texas Tech fell to Arizona State today. And so BYU, they obviously have to take a trip to Lubbock here in a few weeks, but I think that BYU, if they can continue to stack days like they have been able to, because I don't even think they've played a perfect 60 minutes of football yet this season, Mitch, and I don't think that that's to be expected, but they haven't played their best football yet. They did what they needed to win tonight's game, and this game, it's one of those games where because of the rivalry, the emotions, some of the typical things of a football game kind of get thrown out, but BYU just continues to find a way to win. They are so resilient, and they find a way to battle adversity.
Underrated aspect to this win, I think they have a little bit of a normal routine coming out of this still. You think back to last year's win, they get those crazy heroics late up in Salt Lake. They take the bus ride. They didn't get to bed until around 6:30 in the morning after that Utah game. They almost lost an entire day trying to recover. I mean, it's midnight right now here in Provo, and I feel like yes, there was a field storming and the fans celebrated, but now it's kind of cleared out and you get to enjoy it for a day, but you kind of get to bed now, settle in, and you're not losing a day in preparation for Iowa State. Look, that's kind of just a weird thought, but I really think that affected BYU, that hangover, if you will. I know it's a weird term to use for BYU, but there was something there last year against Kansas. That's going to be the challenge. I don't know if this game was as physical as necessarily last year's game, where you saw BYU just take a beating, and it was Jake Retzloff and that whole group, and they were a beaten-up team, and Jake even got hurt in that game, and then they went into Kansas and laid an egg. I think BYU, relatively speaking, comes out pretty healthy. I mean, everyone's pretty much banged up at this point of the season. Even Bear, when he was asked how he's feeling after taking all of these games week after week, all these carries, he's like, yeah, a little bit bruised, a little bit banged up, but that's just part of the deal in football. So I think that was kind of underrated too. Some other underrated aspects to this game, I thought Preston Rex had a nice catch out of the backfield. What was that, a 36-yard gain for Preston Rex? Maybe he could continue to be, or 32-yard gain, excuse me. Preston Rex continues to show moments as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He even got a carry in the second half as well, as he's kind of that second string running back for BYU behind LJ Martin. How about Max Alford, too? Former Utah State transfer, has ties to the Utah program through his dad, his late father. Max Alford comes up with a sack, too. Some big plays from some names that no one was really talking about having an impact in this game.
Yeah, that was a big sack. He flew into the backfield there and was able to recover after slipping to the turf there. It was nice to see BYU finally be able to get home against the quarterback this week, Mitch, because I feel like that's something that they've struggled with this season, to be able to have some sacks, add up there. It was nice to see from the BYU front seven, but I do think the one thing that, as you were talking about, Max, it popped in my head, the turf tonight, there was a lot of slipping as well in this game. I wonder if BYU, there's something to do with that, where they can get more prepared for some of these games, where I just wonder if, like, going into these games, you think about the West Virginia one with the weather. They talked about, having those longer studded cleats. I wonder if that's something that could be added just to like a normal game with these, because we were on the field afterwards and there was like a little bit of moisture, some dew on the ground there. I wonder if that played into things tonight as well. But yeah, this game, they had a little bit of everything to it, Mitch. Like, I just keep on having thoughts flood into my brain because, we're here back doing this podcast, and it's just like kind of decompressing from the adrenaline of just being there and absorbing the fan base. Like, that fan base was the largest crowd since 2004 Notre Dame at LaVell Stadium.
I remember that game. It was Justin Tuck. I was sitting on the west sideline for that one. It was 21 years ago. That was the season. I think that was the first ever high definition HD game for BYU football in 2004. I mean, that's 21 years. And these crowds are just dynamite for BYU. And then we also learned as well, the public address announcer stated that BYU games, home games, have eclipsed 1 million sales of Cougar Tales. So there you go. That might be the highlight of the night. No, really, the true highlight is
how many of those have you accounted for, Mitch?
I've had probably a $250,000. They had Blueberry tonight, apparently. I didn't get one of those. Not everything was perfect for BYU. And they got stuff that they got to work on. Jay Hill's got a lot to point to his defense, say you got to fix this, got to address this. Another thing that I think was kind of underrated, I put into my takeaways piece on KSLSports.com. You can go check that out. Just the clock management. I know Kalani last week with the Arizona game, and it all worked out in the fourth quarter, but they were down 24-14 last week, and they kind of moved the ball slow. It was a 7-minute drive, and it kind of put BYU's defense in a spot last week where you had to go 3 and out, or else you're probably going to lose the game when you were down 24-17. Fast forward to tonight, they get the muff punt recovery, and they didn't realize they burned their timeouts. They're running the football. Now, the positive was that they killed so much time that Utah didn't have a chance to really make a run at it. They did a fake kneel down, which was kind of crazy. I think they got about 15 yards on that, but something to address. And look, I give coaches a little bit of leniency with the clock management thing. I know they make tons of money. I get that. But when you get at field level and you hear all the noises, it's insane to like manage everything. So, but at the same time, I want to see a little bit more urgency there. I thought they were just moving a little too slow because even after the runs, it just felt like they were huddling up, taking their sweet time. It's like, guys, you got to go. You got to move. You're going to lose an opportunity. And then Bear on third down spikes the ball, and then they had to settle for a field goal. You missed out on 4 points if you could have punched in the touchdown. Look, it's very small, and it all worked out in the end, but just things like that. If you want to be in Arlington, those little things get magnified in that quest to go win a Big 12 title. So you got to fix that. But, I mean, by all accounts, though, you're pretty happy with what happened. Third down conversions were an issue, too. BYU started out 0 of 7. Their first third down conversion came in the third quarter, I think, with about 7:30 to go in the third. They started out 1 of 8. Got to improve on third downs. That was a real issue tonight. 0 of 7 to open up that game. So those are some nitpicky things, areas to improve, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think with the clock management as well, Mitch, leaving 4 points on the field there, you think about the way the game ended as well, where BYU doesn't kick a field goal late. They go for it on fourth down. Chase Roberts doesn't come down with a touchdown in the end zone, and they turn the ball over on downs there, when you kind of thought that, if BYU is able to get points there, it's kind of just sealed at that point. But Utah gets the ball back, is able to drive down the field, gets a touchdown, and then they have the chance for the onside kick there. If Utah gets the onside kick and it goes 10 yards and they happen to have recovered it at that point, then it's all of a sudden like a touchdown beats you, and a field goal sends this thing to overtime, where you think back to the first half, and then you're like, oh, those 4 points would have mattered a lot, because then it's only a touchdown that matters at that point. You can't lose at that point. It's going to go to overtime at least. And then I just think that sometimes Kalani gets a little too aggressive as opposed to just going with, maybe some safe plays, some safe decision-making in these situations. almost like Witt, where it's like, I'm sure Whittingham wishes that he would have gone for the field goals.
And that blew me away.
Situations.
That blew me away with Witt. Going back to that, just because he always
Have we ever seen that before from him? Well, like, I can't think back to like a time where it was like he consistently was like, we're going for it on fourth down.
I'm sure it's happened. I don't want to say I put him like Kirk Ferentz a bit, where it's like he's going to be you're going to be predictable. Maybe he's a different Whittingham, and with Jason Beck, there's a little more aggressiveness, and it's kind of in the DNA of Jason Beck. Speaking of Kyle Whittingham, Kalani Sitake was very complimentary in the postgame. Like, that's no surprise to Cougar Nation, but he almost just kind of said, hey, I just want to thank Kyle Whittingham and express my love of what he means to me. I'm paraphrasing. Again, you'll have the full sound up on the Cougar Tracks podcast feed and KSL Sports YouTube, but I almost kind of wondered to myself, does Kalani know that this is the end for Whittingham? Like, it was just, he really went out of his way to say, I really love and respect Kyle Whittingham for what he's done for me. And look, Kyle Whittingham kind of put an unofficial timeline in his coaching career, not this past July, but the year prior in 2024 at Big 12 Media Day when he was talking about the Utah-Miami neutral site game in Vegas. I think that's in 2027. And he said, I'm not going to be coaching that game. It became kind of an unofficial clock of that's when at some point before then he's going to retire. And we're in 2025, and it's October and midway point, and you wonder, could this be the end? I don't know. If for Cougar fans, they probably like that because you send them out with a loss. 3 in a row over Whittingham to close it out because he created a house of horrors for BYU for many years. Let's call it what it is. This guy has been a challenge. Even, again, tonight, that onside kick, you're thinking, hold the phone. I didn't think it was completely over. I mean, everyone's acting all nonchalant, and it's 24-14, this in the bag. I'm like, no. I've seen enough of these rivalry games to know some wild stuff happens, and Utah did everything in their power to make it wild. But I thought that was kind of interesting, just Kalani. Not that I was stunned by it, because that's just Kalani. He's so respectful. He always does, like, really strong respect for this coach and this, but it seemed like, there's a big bulk of his opening statements.
He talked about Whittingham in particular for like a good 3 minutes, it felt like.
Yeah.
Maybe it was longer than that, but I did see them as they were coming across to shake hands at the end of the game, give each other a hug at midfield as the fans and team started celebrating there on the turf. It was like almost like a somber approach to Kalani, and it seemed like, I don't know, it feels like in the past with him and Kalani even, there's been some of these games over the last 10 years, Mitch, where it's been a quick handshake and embrace, like they know they're friends, and then, Whittingham's ticked off about the result, or he's happy about the result, and it's just like, the game's over, let's be done with it, and he separates real quick and goes away. But like, I felt like they talked to each other, and, Kalani said some words to it for, 15 seconds, 20 seconds or so, gave him a good embrace at midfield. So maybe there's something to that. The fact that, if it is over, it's been a remarkable career for him, and it's been outstanding. And this rivalry, Whittingham has taken it to another notch in his 20 years.
No question. Kyle Whittingham has been a tough out for BYU, and I think that love and respect between the two is real. And I think that, I know for Cougar fans, it could be challenging. Like, why doesn't he talk about Bear Bachmeier? Why doesn't he, share his thoughts on Bear?
He's going to be talking about him now.
Well, I know all of college football media, honestly, should be talking about Bear Bachmeier. I really believe now it's going to be beyond, hey, they've got a quarterback named Bear, and he wears number 47. Like, now it's like, hey, this guy's legit. This is a true freshman quarterback, and guess what? He might be the best true freshman quarterback in the country.
What do you think this win does for not only Bears' perception, but BYU's as well? Because it feels like, not to make this about BYU versus Utah, but it does feel like a lot of the time the media, the AP poll, Kalani doesn't have the same benefit of the doubt that Whittingham has had, where, Utah is, preseason, top 15, top 20, whatever the poll is or whatever the discussion is, there's always, we just kind of trust that Whittingham is going to get it done. He's going to bounce back from the 2024 season that he had a year ago, and Utah's back now, and they have an offense with a new quarterback, new OC, and Kalani doesn't get any of that. Maybe the tides are turning a little bit, Mitch, where, hey, these East Coast voters wake up in the morning if they didn't watch this game, and they say BYU they were 15th in the country. They were they're 7-0 now. They beat Kyle Whittingham for the third straight time, and they were a ranked team. This matchup isn't one that's been, in recent years has been a ranked matchup for both teams, and be able to come away with another ranked win for BYU is a big one. I just think that, when's the respect going to start to show up at the level that I think Cougar fans have been hoping for a long time?
They got to win a Big 12 title, and I think they got to get to a college football playoff. Whit didn't get to a college football playoff, but he's been to the New Year's Six, and he won 2 Pac-12 titles. I think that was kind of where he kind of got a little bit of a buffer and always the benefit of the doubt coming into a season like this year off the hills of 5-7. But it is interesting because Utah had a big win over Utah to start the season where they looked dominant. BYU had a dominant win over Portland State. I know Portland State's terrible, but it was like there was no respect given just how flawless they've been. And there's been times where, hey, you go 2 time zones to East Carolina. Yes, because East Carolina is not a glamorous name to you, media voter, but still they soundly beat that team.
It took them a month to get into the AP poll.
So it's just like, at what point do you start to say, BYU wins a lot of games? Even Urban Meyer yesterday said, I didn't realize, is what his words were, I didn't realize they've won 17 of the last 19. Well, how do you not realize that? Like, you guys are the influential voices in the sport. That matters because you guys build a lot of the perceptions and narratives. And sadly, in this sport, perceptions and narratives sometimes win the day more than actual on-field results, it feels like, because everyone focuses on brands. And BYU, I think, has got a really good brand. And I'm really curious to see where they do rank. Shelton Photography on YouTube writes, where do they get ranked? They're number 15 right now. I'd say, 12? 11? I mean, you get a win over a top 25 team on your home field. I'm saying they're probably 12 would be my thought. But I don't know. I don't ever really know where the pollsters are going to go with this. I mean, maybe with it being a little bit earlier kick time, it gives them a little bit of a boost compared to what you'd get from an 8:15 p.m. local time, 10:15 Eastern kick. Maybe that gives you a boost, but we'll see. I think that, BYU should be knocking on the door of the top 10. I think there's an argument they should be top 10. I mean, you're undefeated. It's more than halfway through the season. You're in a power conference and you're 7-0. There's got to be some respect given to that, and I think there's a case they should be top 10.
I mean, just looking at the results this week, Mitch, you've got number 2 Miami lost. Yep. You've got Ole Miss, who lost to Georgia. They were number 5 in the country. Alabama beat number 11 Tennessee. Arizona State beat number 7 Texas Tech. So, I mean, there's a good mix, right? LSU. Yeah, LSU lost. So there's 5 teams right there that were ahead of BYU. Oh, Notre Dame, 6. So, there's a good
Notre Dame won.
Notre Dame beat USC. But, there's 4 teams there that BYU could be, in the mix around. I think BYU might be, 11, 12.
Yeah, I think that's where they'll be. That's kind of where my thought would be, and I think there's a real argument, again, to be in the top 10. BYU gets a huge win, 24-21, 3 in a row in the rivalry, and there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of momentum building for this BYU football program. They stormed the field, the fans did. The public address announcer, I don't remember the exact wording, but he said something to the effect of, please do not rush the field. Did he address that they don't want to pay the fine? Did he say something along those lines? We were in the elevator going down to the field. Did he address the fine on the PA?
I didn't hear it personally.
Okay.
No.
But he did say did not storm the field. And the fans, hey, it's worth, you got to storm the field. You got to do it. I mean, it's BYU in Utah, well worth the $50,000. Whoever's paying that fee, more power to him. Saw Brian Santiago after the game on the field, and he's like, these games are always, you just can't draw it up. BYU and Utah games are always memorable, but I think Cougar fans like ending with a kneel-down victory formation a lot better than needing last-second heroics from Will Ferrin. They got confidence in Big Game Bill, but I think they like just taking that kneel-down a lot more than relying on the leg from Big Game Bill.
Where do you rank this one out of the 3 games, Mitch? I'm curious to see. I think 21's probably the obvious answer just because it got the streak ended and it was like the COVID situation was over and fans were so excited to be back a year later. Where do you rank the 3 games last year, this year, and 21? I
think the long-term impact of this one could be greater felt years from now, because you might look at this moment and say this is where really maybe the tide turned on these 2 programs, and BYU maybe having a chance to lay claim to a 5-6 game win streak. Again, there's a long way to go, and these teams are going to play annually in the Big 12, and it's going to be epic games every single year. But I think maybe this could be the moment where you say that was the spot where BYU said they are truly the top dog in the state, because I think BYU is the best program, best team on the field. They got it done on the field. They are the best program in the state. Look, and there's still a chance maybe these teams meet in Arlington. It could happen. I mean, this Big 12 is nuts. Now, Utah is a game behind Texas Tech in the standings, and Texas Tech's got the tiebreaker. So they're going to need a lot of help, and they're behind BYU now, too. 2 games, and they lost to BYU. But yeah, maybe something crazy happens in the Big 12. We see a rematch in Arlington. That would be pretty crazy. But I wonder to see how Utah responds from this, and I'm curious to see how BYU responds from this coming after a win. Do they just continue to get back to work?
Yeah. Because
they got a tough game against Iowa State next week, who I think Iowa State's sliding a bit, but they've been on a bye this weekend. Curious to see how Iowa State performs next week in this game in Ames. I'll be out there in Ames. It's going to be a crazy week. Big 12 basketball media day. Going to be flying out on Monday and then heading out to Ames. Going to be making the drive from KC up to Ames. So I'm just going to be Midwest living. Just Midwest. Feel like a Midwesterner. Might have an accent when I come back home to Provo, but it's going to be a really fun week of BYU sports. But before we close it out, Kyle, any final thoughts on this big win tonight for the Cougars?
Yeah, Chase said something where, he said that, there were a few things from Chase. I thought Chase was excellent after the game. He said, this team, the way that Kalani's built the culture, they wear the Y on their helmet. They also wear it on their heart. And this team does seem like they played loose tonight. They're a collective unit. They learned from a season ago, he said, after the Utah game. They know what not to do now to really, have a letdown after a big rivalry win like they did a season ago. So I think that'll be interesting to watch as they head on the road to Iowa State. And then Chase, another guy like Tanner Wall, never lost to Utah.
And Chase was he the one that said the meme? I guess we'll never know. I guess we'll never know. He said, yep. What's it like losing to Utah? He said, I guess we'll never know. It was that classic TikTok meme. This is a memorable night in LaVell Edwards Stadium. Biggest crowd since 2004, as we noted, for BYU and Notre Dame back in 2004. But what a great night for the Cougars, Cougar Nation as well. I mean, because these games, and I think this is what connects Kalani so well to this fan base. He thanks the fans, and as he said, I'm so happy for the fans, because he knows, as someone who grew up a BYU fan and lived and died with this team and this program, he understands what these wins mean, because it's just you get a little bit of that kick in your step. You're going to church tomorrow. You're rocking your BYU tie. You're loving life. Like, it's just that's part of the deal, man. And that's what makes these wins sweet. Like, look, fans, they didn't play tonight, but, man, they felt it. It's an emotional drain. People were tense. They were nervous, but at the same time, they were excited for the night. But Kalani, he goes out of his way to say, I'm so happy for the fans, because Cougar Nation has showed up in a big way this season. And I think the momentum, the energy is only going to continue going forward. I thought Cougar Nation was excellent tonight. They brought an energy throughout the entire day, from big noon kickoff, this whole weekend, the build-up on Canyon Road. We were doing a 4-hour pregame show on KSL NewsRadio. Just a great day of BYU football that I'll always remember in my life. And it's just a fun game. And I'm curious to see how BYU continues to build on this. Don't let this be the crowning achievement of the season, because there's so much more to accomplish for this season. But these wins, you always remember. You always remember BYU-Utah games, and this one's no different.
And not just this season, Mitch. I do think that when you obviously, like, this 2025 season is the thing that this team is focusing on, what Kalani and his staff are focusing on, but there's continuity with Kalani and his coaches now. They've got the group, the culture, the mentality of everything set, and they've got 3 in a row for the first time against Utah since 1989 to 1992. Mm-hmm. Stack that. Do what Utah did over the last decade with their winning streak. BYU, don't settle at 3. You know what I mean? Like, the fan base shouldn't be settled with it. And whether it's Whittingham, if he's gone, or if he's back next year, or if it's Scally or someone else, this rivalry means so much. But if BYU truly wants that tide to turn for good, or at least for a good chunk of, the Kalani Sitake era and what it's been through his 10 years so far, continue to stack those rivalry wins because they mean so much.
Memorable night, Kyle. Great work tonight inside the press box at LaVelle Edwards Stadium. Great day on the radio call on extended pregame on KSL News Radio. Appreciate all of you, Cougar Nation, for tuning into this live stream here of BYU taking down Utah 24-21. We are going to sign off here from Provo. We will be back on Monday with more Cougar Tracks every single day, every day at high noon on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page, and then check out all the content on KSLSports.com and wherever you get your podcast. Appreciate all of you. Have a great weekend, and Cougs get it done. 24-21 over the Utes. Signing off from Provo.